Best I can tell, most of us come here with specific lessons and purposes that are revealed to us at various points in our life, if ever, to direct our knowledge and awareness, our focus. More times than not, we follow a desire to its achievement or loss, only to recognize some stronger or more burning need to want. I'm Roach, Mark Roach. I took 10 years after playing the Western rat race game to pause and reflect about what's really going on. I'll share some of that with you here today. Given today's transparency and the advantage offered us with technology, we have a unique view of how we behave and operate. We're no longer envious of those who have mirrors to look at how others may see them, as was a privilege of only the elite at one point in our history. We have plenty of opportunities for self-observation available to us if we dare take an honest look, and assuming what we share with others is an honest rendition of ourselves, who we really are, or what our heart is potentially guiding us to reveal to ourselves, to others in our lives, or on the stages that we create. We are creators. The wise and many masters who used to hide in caves to survive the conclusions that we now take for granted no longer are condemned and hunted as they once were. More so in the free world today. But we continue to see people wrestling with demons, being condemned with mental illness, or such labels in their poverty and resistance to conform with the norms of society. Maybe some of those are just here before their time. Not all homeless people are needy, for example. We might just be needing them to listen, or needing us to listen to them more, to a certain few of them at least, as to understanding what is going on in their lives. And they may be highlighting for us the pointlessness of home ownership versus the values of humanity, living in a more subsistence style around camping, community, and vulnerability. Sound crazy? Well, maybe less today than just a few years ago when we had one view or one avatar that represented how we saw the homeless, which now seems far from the label as we've looked deeper at the condition, or as many still pose it, the problem, which is indeed part of the problem. Now, our bodies create. Our minds drive old patterns, repeat and plan and operate in language that have been vetted carefully for the platforms constructed by commerce, for the most part, much for our survival. Sure, there are words and narratives which speak to the transpersonal, beyond the stories that universally drive life on the planet, along with our divisions between the haves and have-nots, good and evil, the stuff we, for the most part, consider grounded in reality, or at least the reality that we've inherited from our ancestors. Neuroscience is helping us understand that we weave stories to fit our old patterns, more often than we'd like to admit. often after the events have actually occurred. Even the stories that we seek are often to support the stories we've sought to confirm that we are correct in our positions. That is, to support our egos on one hand, but perhaps as we were originally created to ensure our survival in primal environments. The human condition we find ourselves working in is built to allow us to survive extreme primal circumstances, which existed hundreds of years ago. On occasion, circumstances can indeed present primal realities to us today. For example, the American soldier who walks into a Taliban clan where a hostile military foe is hiding behind women and children. I mean, what a mind-bending circumstance where your life is in jeopardy, where one's loyalty and mission, even one's responsibility to fellow soldiers and country, are posed on one hand against the fundamental value of life, represented by the universal innocence, the intrinsic reverence of family and sanctity, at least as we generalize in our heads, of women and children. Fortunately for most of us in the civilized free world today, these are few and far between. Maybe something we are blessed not to directly encounter in our lives. Such experiences lay the seeds of trauma, giving birth to PTSD, complex PTSD, and mind-bending after effects that few survive to share the insights that they may glean into our humanity and expose the darkness for others to heed in their paths. So for the most part, we are numb to the primal forces today until they present themselves, as in this illustration, directly or indirectly onto someone we care about or relate to. We like to believe they are not common to our experience in the civilized world. Yet the fears and the vulnerabilities introduced by this misconception that they do not exist are used against humanity and keep many asleep or hypnotized, as some of the wise and mystics would say. And even those with the insights have had voice, a platform, or more importantly, a conviction with confidence to challenge and dare their brothers and sisters in humanity to operate in the face of such adversity. The language is being developed as we come to an awareness of the secrets that used to define the powers that operated in the world. Now in the open, these powers are vulnerable to the spirit and common connections between people, striving to operate with authenticity and the guidance of a spirit of altruism, of holiness, only reserved for priests in the past. Notice the operation out of old patterns and even the honor we feel in some pressure to naturally convey to our forefathers, family, and legacy are in many respects positioned in our former constructs to hold us back, to pay some reverence to their false identities as they acted out in ways because they didn't have the advantages that we have now in observation. They didn't know any better is often said of the understanding person, be it a child or adult, as they forgive others. Now, I don't believe it's universally true myself of those who are or were acting out with primal violence upon others. But I have come across some who examine themselves well enough to develop in themselves a deep sense of guilt, shame, and ultimately repentance in the course of their lifetime for what they had done to others out of that violence. But to put precedence or a priority on such illusions and loyalties to family pride or the legacy of a person above the complexity in which they may have actually carried themselves is indeed missing the mark for our spiritual nature evolving a platform for which our aspirations for future generations may require, given the mechanization of intelligence and physical robotics, both of which were once were high commodities, even considered at times as talent for trade and commerce. So repeating old illusions no longer serves the better interest of our children and mankind. The decisive and violent spirits which drove the don't know any better behaviors may have been breaking not only the hearts of the recipients, but I'm quite comfortable a few of them felt justified and were indeed pained themselves at their spare the rod and spoil the child music which may have been running in the background. Now, who am I to say? I'm just provoking with a possibility here fueled by curiosity, observation, and plenty of consideration in an attempt to get clear. We must hold on to a practical sense of reality where these primal aspects operate, such as the challenge handed a privileged, safe, and secure upbringing. It's quite easy for those to conform to the past and hold on to an entitled position, provoking and profiting from the fears of the masses who have yet to realize their own power, their own proximity to life without suffering, which is in many respects, most simply, the grandest of illusion. The naivete afforded those ungrounded yet privileged sorts will align with them with this greater good through their own life lessons and encounter to ultimately reflect what is in the depths of their hearts and souls. Not any easy thing for the affluent to walk away from the allures that drive much of life on the planet today. And what training is available to that one who is knowledgeable and willing to run into the wall at the end of the dark alley, which may have indeed been a spiritual calling? The truth is, there is no training for such, and that is where faith and courage live. In the risk of making a leap that transcends the patterns of the past, the older and wiser will understand even more so than the young and restless. But again, who am I to say? I'm just pointing out the patterns and possibilities here to recognize the tide is turning now for the better. Why would a privileged one take such a risk? One who may just in their over-identification with the heroes portrayed in movies, with selfish ambitions, dare to take up the sword for service to others. Where would that person find the humility, the courage, the guidance? Do not confuse such questions as rhetorical, for answers do exist and will be made to such. Why would, or better yet, how would those with advantages in life today be moved to altruism as opposed to dedicating their lives to mining riches, chasing chips, power, and AI, to being recognized at the top of the heap by a medium, our media, to which we are all overexposed, where attention continues to be shown to the celebrated, the exceptional but acceptable, as opposed to that which will indeed pioneer a pathway for our spirit forward in the times ahead, which will indeed require such. So the lack of training or motivation may not be clear to one who does indeed have the capability to support this spiritual initiative. So maybe you are finding understanding and the gumption or courage to speak your heart, to share directly with others, one-on-one perhaps, to support this cause as never in the history of mankind, to make spirit and all the secrets known, to bring the unspoken but known forward and tangible. Such is the challenge I find myself facing in my own inner life, and quite richly, I might add, in my day-to-day life. I'm Roach, Mark Roach. All the best.